Hello, hello, my friends. I am so excited to be here today with my friend Bryan Chamberlain, and we have reconnected after many, many years. It's so interesting how life brings people in and out of your life at different points in time, different chapters, and the people that are truly meant to be there will come back, circle around, even if your life goes in a different direction, right? You always meet back down the road. And so this is why I say never burn a bridge, always be kind. And so I'm really excited for you guys to hear from Bryan. He has created something very special in this world, something that the world needs right now. And we just started talking behind the scenes, and we're like, oh my God, we should be recording this. Like, we should really be having this conversation. So, Bryan, I can't wait to talk about prosperity movement with everyone. But it's a real honor to have you here. I think you're a real stand-up human being who's fighting for what's right in the world, with really great morals and values, and you stand by those, and you've created something pretty magnificent to back that up. And I think that that's what more people need to do. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. What an amazing intro. And I will go ahead and say my creativity and the innovation into what we're doing, it's not a me, it's a we,
Mhm.
100%. I couldn't uh, be doing what I'm doing or driving what we're driving without the leadership that I'm surrounded by, and of course the incredible community and culture that we are casting together as a crew, as a maybe the word would be tribe. We've got a really amazing vibe in our tribe, and I'm really excited that this is actually, I'm gonna be honest with you, this is the first podcast that I'm branching out of our podcast. So this is
Wow.
the first time I'm a guest on, I believe, since Prosperity Movement, with our agency before. I did a little bit, but this kind of feels like a foundational jump start to, okay, let's actually go outside now. And we consider Prosperity Movement to be a baby. And we've done some incredible things since the founding members coming together in 2019, the end of 2019, going into COVID. But we're excited to say that we're just getting started.
Wow. Well, it's an honor and a privilege to have you here. And what we were speaking about before we hopped on was legacy,
Mm.
right? We were talking a little bit about legacy and the legacy that you want to leave. And I think that that is a great topic for today, for you and I to speak about. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about the legacy project that you're creating right now. And one of the things that you mentioned was about our children, like that's what you had commented on. And I told you a little story that I'm going to go into really,
Mm.
really quick. I'm not going to take up much time because I really want this to be all about you,
I
but you're
we could use some details. The world could use it. It's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. And so, when we talk about legacy, I really look at that as my children. I look at that is my legacy. They are my legacy of what will live on. And you had made that comment. I think that that's a beautiful thing, and I'd love to hear your take on this in just a sec. And I said, the reason that I feel that way is because I had a great grandmother, my noni, who's from Italy. I had her in my life. She died when she was 104, and she was totally with it when she died. It was just her body shutting down, and I was 25, so I had like an adult relationship with my great grandmother and heard a lot of stories. And she lived through the World War, and there were troops that came into her little Italian community in the north, and they rounded up all the women and children and they put them in a barn, and they lined up all the men outside the barn and they shot them, and they lit the barn on fire. And by the grace of God, my noni and her sister were the ones that escaped out the back window. That's the story that I got from her broken English. Those might not be the perfect details. But I heard the story from her, and it was around Remembrance Day when she told me, because this woman, regardless of what she'd been through, She never had bad blood against anybody. She was never racist. She was never hateful towards any of that. She just reflected on Remembrance Day and had some trauma and cried through that to remembering what happened to her and her family. So she immigrated to Canada, and at the end of her life, it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't. It matters about the relationships that you have in
Mm,
your family and your children, and like that's
mm,
all that mattered to her. And that was so deeply ingrained in me that I could never not imagine having children. Like that was something that I was just like, I want this contribution to the world, and I want them to know that they can do
mm,
anything, because here I am at 40, like just hitting my stride. Okay. And it took me a long time to work through some of the things that I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think that I was smart enough. I didn't think I was connected enough. All these things
mm,
that I had, all these self-doubts. But now I know that if I had been surrounded as a child, or if I had been surrounded by people that saw a bigger vision, even though I had the big vision, I had to hold true, that were encouraging me and pushing me forward and moving me forward in that direction and supported me. And by the way, like I had amazing parents. I just want you to know that. Like they were amazing, but they wanted me to stay safe. They wanted me to
mm,
get a great job that had, a pension and healthcare that I was stable with, right? So they wanted me to be safe and be able to take care of myself. But I just had these big goals and dreams and things that were like incomprehensible of what I wanted to accomplish in this world. And that was scary. Like that takes a lot of risk. And by the way, we continue to risk and continue to fight through those things, right? Because we know by the grace of God that this is
mm,
our
mm,
our our mission here. This is our mission of service and how we support people, but we get to be that role model for our children. We get to break the generational traumas, the
mm,
generational
mm,
curses, the way that
mm.
things were before. And we get to show them the path to freedom. We get to
Come
show
on.
them the path to creating happiness in their own lives
Yes.
by being the example. And so I would love to hear your take on that. And thank you for
Mm,
letting me share that
well,
story.
like there's so much to while I was listening to you, I'm like, man, like I have a thought and a feeling on that. I have a prompting on that. I have a conviction on that. I have so much. Like we were just talking about the fact that you're Noni, like what she instilled in you, and then there's like this movement of okay, the parents thing, and then there was also another thing that what if I had, which is a wonderful thought process of like, where could I have been at 25? And if I may speak into that with conviction a little bit and work my way into that, starting with
Yeah.
Noni, because Noni had this, I always express this happiness is a happening, but joy is something that you can choose. And so we'll get into a little bit of story here as well. So, but again, I want to focus on these three things out of the gates, which was that instilling from Noni, the the parental kind of the safeness,
Yep.
and then also so you might have to reel me back into these things, okay? So what
Okay.
what what Noni instilled, the safeness from mom and dad, and then the what could I have done if sort of thing, because there's a beautiful thing that's happening there, and it's a powerful thing that's happening there, and at the same time I want to come back to God's sovereignty, because we do
Mhm.
talk about how you very address your faith. I really want to hone in on that. So yeah, I would love the opportunity on that. So let's talk about Noni here for a second. This happiness is a happening, but joy is something that you can choose. And we'll kind of like, I don't have a script in terms of unraveling my story in a perfect fashion here. We're just going
No,
to go
let's get
with the
into
heart.
it.
We're going to go with the heart, right? So I had the honor and privilege after you and I met, and you and I spent a little bit of time at the Upstairs Cabaret in Victoria. Yeah, I
We
think
met it when I
that's
worked
where
in the
you and
bar.
Ryan, remember, like
Yeah,
with
totally.
Monkey Wrench and Shane and the guys and all that stuff. Which, by the
Yeah,
way, I chatted with
absolutely.
Shane recently, and as you know, I'm kind of playing around with music a little bit. So some of the stuff that we were
Nice.
working on is starting to come out a little bit. And he's like, "Go, go, go, do it, go do it."
Yes, yes.
So
I've been called to do more of that too, so just so you know.
that's awesome. I can't
Yeah.
wait. We'll get into it. We've got some long-standing collaborative stuff happening here, and I'm excited about it. One day at a time, right?
Yep.
We'll unpack it all. It's gonna get there. God's will, God's ways. Amen. So we got to spend time at the upstairs cabaret, and I know that's where Ryan was a bartender and all kinds of fun stuff. He would have been in Darcy's pub at that
Yep.
time, and maybe going back and forth if I recall. But so that was an amazing time, and that's where I really, music was my passion, and I really felt that I wanted to play in front of thousands of people. And if I up, back up, a little bit of a conviction on my heart here, because again, we're still on Noni to in the inspiration here, but for me, like I grew up with diagnosis, Asperger syndrome, bipolar disorder, and that there's a lot of stigma surrounding these sorts of things, right? And one of the pinnacle moments for me, where I held a lot of resentment, and this is where I love about Noni, because Noni did not hold resentment.
Nope.
Right? She chose joy. But for the longest time for me, starting in my youth, I was around 7 years old. Teachers told my parents right in front of me, don't expect much from him. He's not going to amount to anything. That's a
Wow.
narrative
Wow.
that I was angry with, and I didn't trust teachers for the longest time. There's maybe one or two teachers as I was growing up that I actually opened up with and connected with. Fast forward between the age of 17 and 21, I'm admitted in the hospital 3 times for drug and alcohol induced psychosis. And so I'm on medication most of my life up to this point. But God convicted me one day. And I remember calling my mom, and I was calling my mom for money for food. And it's true, I needed money for food, but I wouldn't have needed money for food if I wasn't doing the drugs and the alcohol and sitting in resentment. Right. And so ultimately, I'm having this phone call with my mom, and I'm like, Mom, listen, I need money for food. She's like, Kate, here's what I want you to know. And this was a pinnacle moment. She says, I love you unconditionally, unequivocally, irrevocably. There's nothing you can say or do to change how much I love you. If it's in my power to help you, I'm going to help you. A lot of people might have thought that this was enabling. So I'm going to help you as much as I can where I can. If you're in the hospital, can't help you. If you're in jail, can't help you. If you're dead, can't help you. If the well runs out, as in I'm out of money, kid, can't help you. So holy moly, you can imagine the conviction that's all of a sudden starting to happen where I'm like, man, I can't, that's a lot of pressure, man. I feel bad about taking this money. So now I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm sure that you've seen pictures of my transformation and all that kind of stuff at some point in time. But like I look at myself in the mirror and I'm crying out to God. I'm like, God, I know you want me to be there. I know this is not what you want for my life. Cause I'm like literally crack smoking in the, like by myself at this point. 2 pack a day smoker, avid drinker. I literally used to come home after work every day, and I would buy 2 large bags of Doritos, like a tub of Philadelphia cream cheese, and like one of those Haagen-Dazs buckets of ice cream, and I would murder the whole thing. Like that was my come down
Oh
from
my
drugs, like go, and I
gosh.
I, I would literally ingest everything,
Poison
and
yourself.
I would feel so horrible after that, and I tell myself never again, and I'd go do it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So finally, again, I'm in front of this mirror, and I'm looking at myself, and I'm crying out to God, and I didn't hear Morgan Freeman or anything like that, but he like, literally was like, "Dude, you got that cell phone? It's got over 500 phone numbers in it. I want you to delete." Those phone numbers, get a new phone number, no calls going out, none coming in. I want you to step into the gym the next day. And so I did. I walked into the gym the next day, and I remember looking around at everybody and how they looked so joyful and happy, and they looked like they were healthy, and they looked like they were having a pretty darn good life. And so I was convicted even more, and I tried playing with the weights, and it hurt. And so I was like, I don't know if I can do that. So I'll go on the bike. Well, one day, one of the personal trainers, I never forget, Bob Smybert from it was Club Fit at the time, turned into World Health later. He comes over and he's like, dude, check this out. Can I show you something? I'm like, sure. So he did hit cardio with me, high intensity interval cardio. And he was the one making the moves on the bike. He's like, okay, give it everything you got, everything you got, everything you got. Max out the bike, max out, max out, max out. Okay, rest. Did that for 20 minutes. He's like, dude, come upstairs and like, let's talk. So I went upstairs. He's like, what's your goal? There was a muscle and fitness magazine sitting on the desk. I'm like, that. I want to do that. He's like, I bet you can do that. He's like, tell you what, I'll hook you up with a guy. So he hooks me up with this guy named Jason Schott, who looks like a modern day Mr. Clean, literally bald, white shirt, like everything, right? And he whips me into shape. I get given a book called Body for Life by Bill Phillips. I lose over 100 pounds in 6 months.
Wow.
I'm featured in a magazine. Doctors take me off medication. Literally had a Dr. Yakimovich be like, Bryan, I don't know what to tell you. We've done all the tests, and I we I can't give you any more medication because it'll throw you off kilter. Keep doing what you're doing. So all of a sudden,
Imagine
uh,
diet and exercise.
yeah, just proper living, and so all of a sudden, after 20 years almost of being on medication, maybe 15, 17 years, I'm being taken off medication, and I go study kinetics and nutrition, become a head trainer at one of Edmonton's largest gyms. It turned into World Health, and just one thing leads to another, and I'm all of a sudden convicted to go into music. And I wanted to get into music for probably all the wrong reasons, because you can imagine being overweight and depressed and in all those ways throughout my whole entire life. Now girls that wouldn't look at me twice are opening doors and all kinds of other things.
I'm sure.
Right? So like that was a whole new bag of like addiction and poor choices. But I really wanted to get into music for probably not the most pure reasons at first. I was just like, man, I'm going to play in front of thousands of people. I'm going to go get famous. And so this is the area of where you and I meet, is I'm in that, like, I'm here to be famous. And like, let's go have fun. And weirdly, God just working through all of that. I'll tell you what, because all of a sudden, after, I meet a guy named Rod Black. Um, this was after I came back home from the island, and I was back um, at I was living at home with my parents at this time, but I had 5 jobs. So like I joke about how I used to live in a van down by the river singing for my supper, playing the empty bars and bartenders.
Legit, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Playing the empty bars and bartenders to actually working with some great producers and with the guys and actually going and doing some really cool stuff, to all of a sudden, I'm actually getting attention. I went back home to live with mom and dad, but I'm actually starting to get attention from, like, we've got I'm doing a pledge campaign with Rod Black, and we've got Canadian Idol judge Farley Flex on the line that wants to manage us. And so at the time, I'm teaching guitar. I've started a production company. I'm running a pledge campaign. I'm doing property maintenance for my parents, and I'm working at a liquor store. Here's the interesting part about a liquor store. I want people to know how cool this is, because like if you're ever in a rut and you're really trying to get stuff done, you'll hear a lot of cool stuff from Gary Vee. But here's what it looked like for me, is that I'm working in this liquor store, 7, 8 hours at a time. And what most people don't understand is that there's like maybe 2 hours where you actually have to do real work in a liquor store. Like 2 hours where people are actually coming in to get booze. In the meantime, as long as the stocks are like, everything's
Yeah.
stocked and it's clean, you're fine. Like you can read a book, you can run a pledge campaign, you can, you know what I mean? So the
Amazing.
amount of stuff that I was getting done while I was working at that liquor store was incredible. So again, we're on the Noni inspiration here. I'm choosing joy and having a lot of fun, man. Like there's nothing holding me back. No matter what had happened, no matter what trauma, like I'm not
Hmm.
listening. And by the way, there were times where people that I grew up with would come into there and they would look down on me because I'm working at a liquor store, and they're like, and they have no idea what's happening in the background. You have no clue what I'm working on, bro. How do you know I don't own the store?
Right?
you know? And I had people literally walk in there saying, "Are you the owner? Because you got that owner vibe, you know?"
I love it.
And
I
so
love
I
it
did.
so
I had that
much.
owner vibe, man, and everything I was doing, I had the owner vibe. And so I just kept on honing in on that. And then all of a sudden, I go on tour, go to Texas. I work with Rod. We get him up and running, and we get a top 10. Like we hit, like, I believe there was a number 1 on the country charts there for a little bit with a song called "Keeping On." So we go from, he was the last guy to get over $1 million record deal with Island Def Jam. He goes bankrupt, I believe it was in 2017 or something like that, to us starting over in country and getting a number 1 with
Wow.
Canadian Idol judge Farley Flex. And then I find the Rob Nash project. And this is where we're going to get a little bit more into Noni here, because when I met Rob, I had seen this presentation. This is a guy who literally had, again, he was a top 20 artist. He ripped up his record deal to go on a like a special kind of Johnny Cash type tour. He started with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. He would go to youth detention centers, schools, junior highs, you name it, and he would share his story. His
Mm.
story is so profound. This is a guy who was pronounced dead on arrival. His band was called Live on Arrival, but he was pronounced dead on arrival. He was in a coma, and they didn't think he was going to come back. They didn't think he was going to come back at all. So they performed a test surgery on him where 50 students came in to play around with his brain. They dropped a piece of his skull on the ground and it shattered. And so they makeshifted it and put it all back together. And he miraculously came back to life. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is insane. Okay. And so, like, this is what I love about Noni, because, like, I wanted to express this earlier, but a lot of people will say everything happens for a reason. I learned from Rob that we've got to be careful with that term. Everything happens with potential. And
Wow.
here's what he taught about that is basically, when he came out of that coma, he didn't have a miraculous, like all of a sudden it was an epiphany or anything like that immediately. He went through hard times. He went through a lot of pain and he struggled and he heard people say everything happens for a reason. He was sitting there. Why did I get hit by a semi truck? Why would he literally had an auntie tell me, you must have done something wrong because God went and hit you with a semi truck. Like, yeah, he literally had family saying stuff like that. Can you imagine?
Wow.
So he's sitting there
Wow.
like being
Could be
traumatized by all
worse.
this. And every time he'd hear everything happens for a reason, he's been sitting there like, why? Why, God? What's the reason that this happened to me? Well, one day he had an epiphany with his friend because his friend was like, dude, I think I figured out why you got hit by that semi truck. He's like, oh, he's like, why? He's like, I think you got hit by that semi truck because you were going too fast on an icy road. He's like, whoa, everything happens with potential. I made some decisions. More times than not, everything that occurs to us is based on a decision.
Yeah. Yep.
And sometimes it's the decision of someone else, but you're not like you have to take responsibility, not for the
Absolutely.
reaction, but the response. How are you going to respond to what happens to you? I truly believe wholeheartedly, I'm convicted, and I know there's a difference between a belief and a knowing. And it's the kind of knowing when we look at the Bible and when we understand that John the Baptist got his head cut off and he laughed hysterically and historically before he did. What's the reason why? Was it because he believed in where he was sitting next, or he knew? Some people just said he was crazy. He was crazy, John the Baptist. But it seems like, sounds like, looks like he knew what was next for him. And so I look at Romans 8:28-29, where it says, for all those that love the Lord. And I feel like this was in Noni's heart. For all those that love the Lord, God will be glorified in all things. Your mess will turn into a message.
Mm-hmm.
God will be glorified in all things. And brothers and sisters, we would be conformed to the image of Christ. We would die to ourselves, we're inherently selfish. That's how we come into the world, born in Adam. And then we can transform into the image of unconditional, unequivocal love. Galatians 5:22-26, which is fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, kindness, forbearance, self-control, and against such things there is no law. That's the spirit that I see in Noni. That's what I hear and I
Absolutely.
see. And that's what I got to learn in that process with the Rob Nash project. And this is where my heart starts to shift with the mission, the vision, and the value focus. Because what I got to see with Rob is it was so impactful that at the end of the show, kids would hand in things like suicide notes and razor blades as a sign of making changes. I can't
Wow.
tell you how many kids I got to write, "This is my last
Oh,
mark," on their arms, on their scarred up arms. I got to write, "This is my last mark." And they made a proclamation. This is it. That's over. That's done. I'm done. That's it.
wow.
That's the
That's
kind of
impact.
That's true impact. Now, what I felt convicted of while I was on tour with Rob was on damage control ministry of what's happening in our culture today. Here's what I see in our culture, because after I transitioned from the Rob Nash project, I had to start over. I was mentored for 3 years, just like Jesus was mentoring the disciples for 3 years. I was with Rob for 3 years, interestingly enough. And poof, he's like, you gotta fly, kid. You got your ministry in your heart. I see it. I feel it. He could feel it by the end. It was like, dude, it's undeniable that you got a mission, vision, value, focus in your heart. We got ours. I'm still here. I still love you. He was the best man, one of the best men at my wedding. But you got to go. I got to let
Wow.
go from my dream. But that was hard, man.
I
That was
bet.
hard. When you have a mentor looking at you and saying, I love you, but I got to let you go. And it's the same thing when he wrapped up his record deal. One of his mentors said, I love you. He actually took care of the bill, by the way, because he ripped up a record deal. And most people don't know, but you're in debt
Yeah.
when you have a record deal. He was
Yeah.
in massive debt. His
Yeah.
mentor took care of the debt and said,
Wow.
you keep going, go do what you got to do. And then he came back as the CEO of the company later,
Oh, I
later,
love a good comeback story.
years later. He's now a board member. This is the type of stuff that's how God works, right? God will throw you in a
Yes.
different thing. He did that with the disciples. Y'all go, and then you come back as a team when you're called to, and it is what it is. So ultimately, I'm going through this transition, and I felt really convicted while I was on the road with him because I'm like, man, I see that we're doing damage control, but what's the solution to the problem? Because I see in our culture that kids are being raised by teachers, not parents. Because back in the day,
Thank you.
we had a nurturer at home, and we had a hunter gatherer go out and provide for the family. That
Yes.
culture is not in existence anymore.
Thank
It's
you.
not in existence anymore. Right now,
Yep.
moms and dads are out there slugging it out and not being able to keep up with inflation, and this is a massive problem. And so I'm sitting here like, okay, or like, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
And then you start to see things like there's 50% divorce rate right now, 75% for entrepreneurs that are not working together, 9 out of 10 people that have any kind of mental health or addiction, boom, 9 out of 10 divorce. And then get back to this number, which is 50% of the Western world deal with mental health and addiction in some way. There is stigma, there's miscommunication, and boom, get back to divorce rate 50% here right now. And it is absolutely sad that it's not necessary. Because
Absolutely.
if all we did was uplift, empower, and equip parents and families, because the Godhead biblically is super simple: God, mom, dad, then kids.
Amen.
And inspiration should trickle down. And yes, it should also move up where the kids are inspiring the parents to get moving and grooving and to
Mm-hmm.
train up a child. But it shouldn't be coming from a place of trauma from the bottom up. It should be inspiration reigning like kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Rain as in water, and reign as in let's go kingdom. That's the way that it could be, and it should be, and we get to be the change in that if we want to. And that simple solution to me is driving this mission, vision, value system with the prosperity movement that we have. We call the 4 pillars of prosperity. And it is understanding, and we don't have it on our website, and I want to start doing this with the biblical principles behind each notion, which is time. The Bible literally says that we're but a vapor, but a blade of grass. Time is our most valuable asset. We don't know. We know our days are numbered. God is the only one who knows how much time we have. He is sovereign. Our days are numbered. Super simple. Health. The Bible talks a lot about the body being a temple of the Holy Spirit, and it's our responsibility to take care of that temple. Your Noni made it to 104. You said she was with it. The only thing that went was the body. Her mind was sharp. The
Mm-hmm.
Bible calls us to keep your mind sharp and to sharpen others and be sharp in Proverbs 27:17. To be bold as a lion, Proverbs 28:1. That's what the Bible calls us to do. John 10:10 says that the thief came to seek, kill, and destroy, but I came to give you life and to give it to you abundantly. That comes with choices. You get to choose. It literally says desire in the Latin, D, of the sire, father. You got one of 2 choices. We all agree there's good and evil in the world. Which one are you going to choose? Which king do you want? God's going to place the desires on your heart that's going to be in alignment with him. And that's in the Galatians 5:22-26. And I'll digress on a lot of this and get to the point. Again, your health is your wealth. And then you move to relationships, which ultimately is your legacy. So we got time, you got health, you got relationships. Love your neighbor as you would love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got legacy. And legacy comes with training up a child. And here's the deal. The Bible talks more about money than it does about marriage, although marriage is the most important covenant that you will ever make in your life. And the way that you live that marriage is what your legacy turns into. What your kids are going to experience is what they're going to emulate. Monkey see, monkey do. And I'm not saying that because we've evolved from monkeys, because that's not the case, but super simple. They're going to do what you do, not what you say.
Hmm.
And so that's
Absolutely.
that's ultimately the prosperity vision of what we're doing, and the solutions that we want to provide is that mission, vision, value, culture, help families drive more impact and income so they can do more of the things they love with the people they love most. I believe it was Mother Teresa that said, if you want to change the world, go home and be with your families. But how are you going to do that if you're not being impactful with your time, money, and energy and your
Absolutely.
resources?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Brian, there's so much that you said. We are so on the same page about all of this. And this is like truly the mission that I feel called to do is bring families back together, give them a way that they can
Rest
make
them.
money, give them a way that they can thrive, give them a way to buy their time back, right? Be able to show them that health is so important. You know, my Noni had a half-acre garden in her home. Like she lived on
Right?
her own, by the way, until she was 103. She
Mm,
fell
mm,
taking recycling out and slipped on black ice and broke her wrist. And
mm,
that's the only reason she went into assisted living. That's the only reason. But she had a
mm,
beautiful garden. She grew all of her own
mm,
food, right? Like she would have a half a glass of wine in the morning at 11 and half a glass of wine at 3 p.m. And this was just
mm,
culture, right? And it was just, and she made her own wine, by the way. Like, you know, she made
mm.
everything herself. She would always, and like, she would host meals at 100 years old. Like, she would host meals for us as a family, right? Like, it was wild. Just such a blessing that she was, and like such a matriarch of our family. And you know, she was married. Her husband passed away when she was 80. And so could you imagine 24 more years without a partner that you'd been with for 60 years? Like, it's just it's wild when I start to think about it. And you know, we talk about marriage, and both Ryan and I, our parents are divorced. We have 4 sets of parents plus his biological parents.
Mm,
And so we have a very large family, and we're very grateful for that because we have a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different people to hold
mm.
counsel and have conversations with, right? So it's pretty cool that way. But we were both dead set on finding a partner that we could raise kids with. Like my
Come on.
parents always said, you know, who you marry is not as important as who you have children with. And
Mm,
make sure that when you get married, you know who you are, because
mm,
and you know who they are, you know what their
mm,
faults are, you can live with them for the rest of your life, right?
mm.
Like, and because they will get worse as you age, and you will go, you
Right.
know, go on paths together. Like, this is the person that you want in your life, through good, through bad, through ugly, right? Like, this is the person. And when I met Ryan, yes, he was a bartender at Darcy's Pub. I was a bartender at Upstairs, and he would come up, and sometimes we would work together. I'm never dating a bartender. Like, I'm never doing that, and then I marry one. You know, so I understand, you know, the music industry. I don't know if you know this about me, by the way. I have no idea if you know this about me, but I started singing competitively when I was 7.
No way.
Yeah. And so I would sing at hockey games. I would sing at, you know, at school. I would sing in my community. I went to Humber College for vocal jazz.
Wow.
And when I was there for 3.5 years. And I was like, this kills my parents. I was 2 classes short of a degree because I went into this program, and I had a music business teacher. And this is kind of where I woke up to what the industry was. Like, I was like, I want to be the next Christina Aguilera. Like, I want to perform. I want to get out there. Like, I love being on stage. And this is going to go full circle. It's so interesting to me. I loved Broadway. Like, I loved
So
acting. I
cool.
loved being part of a show. And I was like, I see my name in lights. Like, this is what I want. But again, didn't have like a ton of support from my parents, because I knew that I was going to be a starving artist. Like you said, people go bankrupt in that industry all the time. It's a very difficult industry. And I walked into a music business class with a guy who'd won a Juno and like been in the industry for many, many years. One of the unique things about Humber College is that all of the teachers at Humber were musicians. So
Mm.
like, you weren't just learning from teachers that were teaching music, you were learning from professional musicians, which was really interesting. And so I walked into the class, first day, music business class. Everybody wanted to take his class, by the way, this music business class, right? Walk in, there's 60 kids. There's not enough desks for kids to sit at. There's 60 kids in this class, and there's room for 25 or something. And he looks around the room, and he goes, first of all, this is a year-long class. It's not a semester, it's a year-long class. He's like, there might be 15 of you standing at the end of this semester, at the end of the year. Okay. Most of you are not going to make it through the first week. And many of you, you know, will want to be here, but are not going to like what you have to hear. And he's like, look around the room. I want you to look at all your peers. And like, by the way, you had to audition to get into this school. Like it was not, I was shocked that I even got in. And I was around like prodigies. Like I really felt like I was not talented enough to be there. It was unbelievable that the talent that was in this school. And he said, look around the room. He said, one of you out of this class of 60 is going to make enough money to pay your rent. And I was like, oh, like,
Wow.
oh, that sucks. Right. And he said, one of you, he's like, not even like become a star. One of you is going to make enough money to pay your
Right.
rent with music.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, ooh. And so we went on. I was one of the 15 standing at the end of the year because I am determined and I am very stubborn. But some of the things that we did is you said you worked with one of the producers of Canadian Idol. Well,
Yeah.
he brought in the Canadian Idol contract for
That's
us to
cool.
go over. And so he's like, I want you to go home and read this contract and come back and tell me if you'd sign it, because your chance at stardom lies in that. And I went
Wow.
back and I read the contract, and the contract was basically you sign your life away for an infinite amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
No 10-year contract, no 5-year for an infinite amount of time. They can say anything about you in press. You have to eat, sleep, dress exactly what they want you to be. You have to be a robot. And I was just like, that's not me.
No, it's not fun.
I'm like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want this, right? And then, even worse, a few weeks later, after like discovering that my dreams are being shattered, by the way, he comes in and he says, now for those of you, and there was like mostly males in the class at this point in time, they've like weeded out all the weak females, right? And so there's like a handful of us females that are still in the class. And he goes, I need to be real honest with you. If you want to be the next star, you are going to have to sleep your way to the top. And my jaw dropped and I went, did you actually just say that? And he said, let me give you an example. Shania Twain, Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, all of these people are dating their producers.
Yeah.
All of them. Every single one of them. Celine
Married
Dion.
and divorced.
Right.
Yeah.
Married and divorced. And I just started realizing all of my values and beliefs do not align with this career.
I feel like the Celine Dion thing, that seemed like a real, genuine, passionate
she
thing.
made it out.
But like, yeah, you look at that and you realize, and it is very sad. And here's the thing though, too, is that's also a fallacy, because guess what? I guess I was the one, because I bought my first house with music.
You were the one, man.
I got to buy my
You were the
first
one.
house with music, and I had people tell me the whole time, just like you, go for Canadian Idol, go for Canadian. And I said, no, it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right to me. I'm not going to do that. And then ended up Canadian Idol came to me.
Amazing.
Right.
Amazing.
And so
you had something inside you.
You get to be true to you in anything and everything you do. You get to. You don't got to, need to do nothing. You get to be true to you in anything you do. You get to choose that. And so good for you for not buying into that BS. The real BS we want to get into is the biblical studies, not what other people have to say about us, but what God has to say about the fact that we are, and I'm going to say I am, because he identified himself like that in the book of Exodus. I am is the most powerful thing you can say or do. You'll hear Henry Ford say, if you think you can, you think you can't. You're right. Well, that's cool. We'll listen to that guy, but listen to what God has to say, that as a man thinketh, he becomes. And I am is the most powerful thing you could ever say, because anything you put after it becomes true.
I love
It
that.
is what it is, kids, ladies and gentlemen. You get to choose. If you want to, you get to. And if you choose a mindset or a heart set that is rooted in absolute, there's two different kinds of fruit: the fruit of the kingdom, or the fruit of the other guy. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that one's rotten, right?
Yep.
It's a rotten tree. You don't want the rotten tree fruit. You want the fruit of life, and you want the fruit of the spirit. You want the light, the life, and the way, and you get to be that. If you want to, you get to. You get to choose. And so the power of I get to, when I hear people say I have to, or I get, or I got to,
yeah,
it's just like, ooh, sounds like you're a slave.
I get to.
Sounds like
Always.
You're a slave. Hey, I get to go to work today to work towards my dreams and for my family. I get to. and I
Did
get
you
to make
always have
changes.
this? Were you always like this? Did you always have this incredible belief behind you? Like after, that kind of turning point after, moving through drug addiction, did you always have, because I fell out of that. Like I didn't have the confidence. I was raised Catholic and then I got church hurt a little bit and I was like, this is stupid. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And I fell away from God for quite some time. I went into the whole spiritual aspect of like, I can do this myself. And
Right.
that's honestly where I fell out of confidence because it wasn't it I took that on myself.
So we're now in point number 2 with mommy and daddy wanting us to play safe.
Yeah,
So we're staying on track. We're on
let's
track. We
do
got
it.
one more point after this, but we're now on point number 2 of mommy and daddy wanting us to stay safe. I grew up with, remember that moment with the teacher? There's a
Yep.
funny scene in Goldmember. Do you remember Goldmember?
Yes.
Daddy wasn't there to take me to the fair to change my underwear.
Yes,
Daddy
yes,
didn't
yeah.
care. That's a funny scene, right? That's hilarious. It's not funny when you're living it. So my
Right.
biological father was not there. Okay, he was not there. I had this amazing stepdad that stepped into my life, and I love him. He earned dad, and my grandfather, most amazing father figure on the face of the earth. I am so blessed to be surrounded by such incredible men. And my biological father, it took me a long time to rid the resentments and to seek first to understand. So Matthew 7:7-8 says, seek and you shall find, ask you shall receive, knock and the door will be open to you. Matthew 6:33 says, seek first the kingdom of God and all of these things will be given unto you. So while we sit here with resentments towards other people, have we ever thought to think that hurt people, and trauma breeds trauma?
Yep,
And so, what do we
absolutely.
want to do to understand what's going on over there? That's the question. So, when I sat down with my Baba and she told me stories and brought to light the fact that, my grandmother, my great grandmother, so this is my grandfather Vic, he basically grew up. And there was a lot of stuff. Like they grew up in that era, very similar to your grandmother. They're not quite that old. They didn't make it. Sorry, your grandmother was young all the way through in her heart, right?
Yeah,
but,
totally.
but like my great grandmother, they used to have a well in the kitchen. She hung herself in a well. So my grandfather's family, they go through this trauma of the fact
Oh,
that their mom hung herself in a well. And fast forward, while my grandma was pregnant with my dad, um, she was best friends with her mom, and she loses her mom right in the middle of a pregnancy. And so now you've got all of this built. Can you imagine the kind of stress that she was under while she has this
and mental
child?
health, all of that comes back
Right?
around, right?
Right?
Hmm.
And so now my dad comes out, and at that time they didn't talk about mental health. It was so stigmatized. They threw everything under the rug. And so my dad's dealing with bipolar disorder and all of these mental health illnesses as he's growing up, but they don't have the support and the understanding and all the stuff that we have today, the resources. They didn't have it back then. And so now here's a fun one. I'm conceived at a Kiss concert. Yeah, I always wasn't sure why I really loved Gene Simmons and what was going on
I
over
love
there. I
it.
find that out later. But like, point is that dad doesn't know how to express love, how to be loving, how to all of these things. Um, grandparents did their absolute best. Dad's living with a lot of hurt and his own trauma growing up. And then all of a sudden, you know, I come along and they want to try to do what they can to make it work. Of course, they didn't get married. My mom was 18 years old at the time. And he just couldn't love himself. And if you can't love yourself, how do you love other people? So
Mhm.
this is where now I was able to detach myself and not take it personally. I was able to say, you know what? He did his best. And I should forget it. Now we have a good relationship. We talk every once in a while. My dad Robert actually has a beer with him every once in a while. We have family gatherings and barbecues and that's grace. That's the love of Jesus,
Yeah.
right? But that was basically, I grew up with, again, I wasn't loved, I wasn't worthy, I wasn't good enough, and this was a transformation that is still in the making, right? Like, to answer your question of did you always have this? The answer is absolutely not. And there are still moments that I need to go get rooted in the word. And there are still moments where I have to recalibrate. There are still moments that I have to, it's kind of like you're on a plane. Like if you let go of the wheel, it moves, right? So you've
Yeah,
got to, whether you're in a plane or a car, you've got to constantly readjust to stay on path. And as long as you have a clear path, that's why intentionality through mission, vision, values is so important. And I know we got to tie this up. So if we're getting back to the last point, which is if only I knew this sooner, how
yeah,
far could I have been?
I know.
It's a beautiful notion. It's a wonderful notion. I believe that one of the worst questions that we can ask God is why, because it's from a victim perspective. And God doesn't want you to be a victim. He wants you to be a victor. He doesn't
I
want you to be a
agree.
survivor. He wants you to be a victor. He is
Victor of your life.
victory. His
Hmm.
name is victory. And so the best question that we can always ask in every scenario that we are in, because you have everything you need to succeed right here, right now, no matter where you are, even if you're homeless. I don't care. Because if David could take a few rocks and a slingshot to take down Goliath, you can be resourceful with the resources you have. You don't need resources. You can be resourceful with what you have. You have everything you need to succeed right here, right now. Everything, absolutely everything. John 10:10, life of overflow. And so, um, God is sovereign. He sees you, He knows your pain, and He loves you, and He wants you to just simply follow Him. Super simple. And so, what was, what is, I don't have to ask why. I can ask, what have I learned up to this point? God, what do you want me to see? What do you want me to hear? What do you want me to say? What do you want? I don't want my eyes. I want your lenses. I don't want my ears. I want your ears. I don't want my words. I want your words. I want all of you. Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God, and all of these things will be given unto you. I want you. I want that. That's it. And when you focus on that and you understand God is sovereign, which means He saw this coming, and it's not for a punishment. Your pain is not a punishment, it's a platform for His purpose. You were created fearfully and wonderfully made, unique in a vision, in His divine vision for His divine purpose. And you get to walk that out.
I freaking love this conversation so much. You get to be the victor of your life. You don't have to be a victim of your circumstance. And,
You get
you
to.
know, when I say, what could I have done if? I want to kind of just circle back to that real quick before we talk
Sure.
real quick about, well, and like, I don't know how much time you have, but I would like to talk
This
a
is a
little bit
big one.
about prosperity movement. Okay. But you know, when we talk about recalibrating, I really resonate with that. And I think a lot of people do, that we're constantly recalibrating. And when I think, what could I have done if, I think that in those moments of, how do I want to raise my children? How do I want to raise them? You know, in a state of faith where they honor God. You know, it's so cute. My daughter, you know, she's like, she was talking about Jesus the other day, like how she talks about him. And, you know, like, he's like, yeah, you know, like my friend Jesus, basically, you know, and it's so cute. And I appreciate that she has that innocence about her. And, you know, I don't ever want to hinder her growth in spaces. I want to encourage her growth at all time. And because we have these things that were ingrained with us as little kids, I get to rewrite that story if I'm conscious of it, right? I get to rewrite that story, and I get to do better for my children
Mm,
and to support them in who they are becoming and what they want. And so when I say, what could I have done if, I want to make sure that when my kids look back on their life, they know, again, legacy, right? We'll tie it back into legacy, that their parents believed in them no matter what they wanted to do, no matter who they were. They had that unconditional love. I love your mom, by the way, for that like hard knocks talk that she gave you, right? That, hey, you know, we will love you unconditionally for this reason, for all of these things, but you have free will. You have a choice here that you need to make, and that we will support you in all of those things as long as we can. And I
hmm
think that having that kind of unconditional support, that there is always a safe space to fall. There's always, we all make mistakes. You know, you are not your mistakes. You are allowed to grow and change your perspective, all of those things, right? And so when we talk about legacy, and how we want to raise our children and what comes next. They are our legacy. They are the thing that lives on. We die twice in this world. We die once when we take
Mm.
our last breath, and we die the second time when our name is uttered for the last time. Do you want that to be a whisper, or do you want it to be a roar? You get to
Mm.
decide, right? And so let's talk. And I do have a little bit more time, about another 15 minutes if you've got it,
Sure, I'll make it.
if you can. But I want to talk about prosperity movement, because this is a legacy. This is a legacy that you can live and give to your family and create better habits and lead the pack on it. I absolutely love what you guys are doing, your partnership. I love that you said, this is a community. This isn't just me. This is like a community of amazing humans that have a similar mission, that want to leave an impact in this world, that want to influence people in the most positive, divine way.
Mm.
So, talk a little bit, if you can, about how this all came to be and what you guys are doing over there and how you're helping families. Like, I'm so so in awe of what you've created from this to that. I think it's so rad.
Yeah, so you've heard that, like, we've kind of gone over a bit of the story of like the transitions and the things that were learned beforehand, and again the intentions beforehand to what it turned into. Again, the training ground that I got from the Rob Nash project is what instilled the mission, vision, value, focus in my heart. And when I was recalibrating, like, again, I got let go from my best friends in 2017, and it was time for me to move at the speed of what God had for me at that time, and it turned into me moving across the country in with my mother-in-law. And what an angel for, taking us in. It's what my wife also wanted. My firstborn son was also, I think a month into being born when I first got let go. And I had also gone through a bit of what we call a manic episode, because I for the first time, I had mentioned that I was admitted in the hospital 3 times for drug and alcohol-induced psychosis between ages 17 and 21. At this point, it had nothing to do with drugs. It was stress induced. Like, I wasn't equipped at the time, didn't know how to deal with it. So I'm living at my mother-in-law's, and it's very, very uh, it was humbling, to say the least. For I would even go ahead and say, be honest, and I felt emasculated by the entire thing, because now I'm living with my mother-in-law and my wife and my firstborn child, and Heidi wants to have another kid, and I'm just like, are you crazy? Like, come on, man. Like I got work to do. I gotta get my life in order. Anyway, I'm a teacher's aide down the street. Here in Carstairs. I live in a little hamlet town in the old mayor's house now at this point, a 120-year-old character home. It's a beautiful home, and it's got some history, and we're doing some amazing ministry through here right now. But to stay on point, I'm wrestling with all this, and still got this vision in my heart. Like, these are the things I got to do, and I got to move. So while I'm working over there, I'm also going through WFG and Primerica and learning about the Rule of 72. And
Sure.
these are the tools that I'm like really honing in on. And so I actually start doing actually really well. Um, there was this big kind of tension in our church at the time too, between WFG and Primerica, because whole life, universal life policy argument.
Sure,
and
sure.
and we know what's his Dave Ramsey saying that this is a bad
Mhm.
investment and all. So yeah, I literally went from being in one of the biggest crews in WFG with one of the biggest leaders in all of North America, to going to Primerica, because I was like, oh well, God says this, and God, like, it's just a bunch of crap. It was just is what it is. So anyway, I go through that process, but then I also realize through that I'm like, man, I'm really not passionate about sharing this package for some reason, sitting down with families and doing this. I like, because I was starting to introduce marketing and sales tactics and we weren't even at COVID yet, but I already kind of foresaw. I felt like this was going to be so important. I'm starting to use ManyChat. I'm starting to use funnels, and I'm starting to use all this stuff to get people's attention, to go through a process, to commit to sitting down with me. And the leaders of Primerica were like, "Nah, you're crazy. This is not how we do it. We do the kitchen table. We do the kitchen table. We do the kitchen table. We do the kitchen table." I'm like, y'all don't get it. Fine. I'm going to go do my own thing. So I'm like, I need to get better at marketing and sales and better and better and better at this. So I actually working on the south side of Calgary, driving an hour a day to get to that office, working with a marketing firm. I'm now being contracted by this marketing firm, and I want to get better. And so I'm looking for coaching. I'm still living at my mother-in-law's, and I'm doing a lot better financially, but still not the best. Still not raking it in or anything. And all of a sudden, I'm introduced to the Zach Shanky guy. And the Zach Shanky guy is literally working with this, what they call the mentor of mentors, one of the most famous guys that you've never heard of, who's mentored Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson. His name is Joel Bauer. And Zach is working with this guy, and he's doing the marketing with him. They took a company from zero to just scraping 7 figures in 14 months. Just amazing what they were able to do.
Wow.
And so I reach out to him. He's a $10,000 a month coach, and I'm like, man, I don't even have two nickels to rub together. The bank won't give me any money. They won't even look at me. Won't touch me with a 10-foot pole. Which, by the way, now they want to give me like almost $20,000 credit every week. But, but like, we're having this issue. We're having this issue. We're having this issue. But I'm like, I'm gonna get resourceful and figure out a way to get what I want. We settled on a 4-month focus, and he said, okay, let's go. And on our first session, he saw something really special in me. Again, mission, vision, values, and some of the approaches that I was taking. And he was like, dude, you do the things I don't do. I do the things you don't do. We should go into business. I'm like, thank the Lord, because I don't want to keep paying you.
I can't afford it. Let's go.
And he says, dude, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to pay you back, but what I am going to do is, like, let's go into business. You collect the money. As soon as you pay yourself back what you paid me, we'll incorporate the company. Well, high level, within a month and a half, I had gotten that money back, and we're now incorporating the company. And we are going at it, and we get these two clients hit our desk. One was a 5-time New York Times bestselling author, had been featured on Oprah, every book that she put out. I'm not going to say a name, but that was one of them. And then the other one was, Olympic gold medalist, Theo Fleury, handpicked by Wayne Gretzky, and just incredible individual on a mental health initiative that obviously we're in alignment with. And so I had the privilege of helping him with that, and doing a webinar, and kind of guiding them. We had the privilege of help guiding him through that, through COVID, and what he was doing through that, which was amazing and powerful. I'll never forget it. But that was the two that hit our desk, and I ended up saying no to the 5-time New York Times bestselling author based on mission, vision, values, and the communication level. And Zach was like, "I didn't know you can do that. Why are we
Imagine
doing that?"
that.
He's like, first of all, I was like, why'd you say no? I'm like, because I couldn't see us, like, I couldn't see myself introducing these people to my family at a barbecue. It's just not,
The
and
barbecue test.
yeah, the values were not in alignment in terms of
Yep.
communication, and we'd be a slave to it. And he was like, you can do that? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, I think I'm going to sell my shares and we're going to go into business full time. I'm like, you're crazy. You're making way more money over there. We're not even close. So he does. And I was like, you're
Wow.
not, but you did. And here we are. And so we take Convert on Command. We're registered in Wyoming, and we take Convert on Command. We help thousands of businesses across North America, like, get the proper resources through, yeah, as you know, go high level. We have our own prosperity portal through that. And we were helping businesses 3x, 5x, and even up to 10x their revenue through ads, and
Wow.
started attracting more and more companies all over across the board. Even went into Europe with some ads, and focusing on helping companies over there. So it was powerful. We did that, and then all of a sudden we meet this trading guru who, his name is Justin Singh. He lives out of Edmonton, Alberta. He has a club called Church of John. And when we saw screenshots of what that guy had accomplished, we were like, we should probably start making a shift. Like, this is a way that
Wow.
we can really help families. So we started doing that, and the rest is history. Here we are. We've got an online education platform called Prosperity U, where we just basically help people drive more impact and income, starting with trading as a vehicle, using it as a proper business model. Not just investing, but business, treating trading like a business. What gets measured gets managed. And we've aligned ourselves with a world-renowned master trader, James Leone, who literally, if we go last year, you can look at, I'm not going to educate on pips, but pips last year, I believe it was over 25,000 pips just in scalp trades, not counting swing trades. He lost a total of 18 over 5 plays, and he's at 50-pound lot sizes. And James, his story is a couple decades ago. He placed his first trade, and basically within the year, he bought out his boss's company. Bought out his
Wow.
boss, didn't fire his
Wow.
boss, bought out his boss's company and built a 3.5 million pound facility. And now he's just passionately teaching people how to do the same things that he's doing. And we have students that are getting incredible results. And we also have students, if I'm being completely transparent, that aren't doing very much with it. It's kind of like the gym. There's a lot of
Yep.
people who get a gym membership on New Year's Day, and then at the end of the year, they're still looking like they're made of clay, right? And so,
Yeah. Well,
like,
20% of the people do 80% of the business. Like this is just the law of averages.
yeah, and I really want to be able to flip that upside down, but
Yeah.
it's a get to mentality, right? So
Yep. Yep.
like it's a one day at a time thing, and really a tractor factor of getting the right people to understand, and we are attracting people who are in alignment with the mission, vision, values, and that's we're seeing some really great numbers based on what gets measured gets managed. And so that's what we're doing, but we have a few phases, including a diversification phase, because if you can focus on trading successfully 1 to 2 hours a day, what are you doing with the rest? What are you doing with the rest? What kind of impact are you driving in your community? What kind of registered charities do you want to drive? What kind of what kind of initiatives do you want to give to? What kind of initiatives do you want to put your time into? Because if we're training up a child, what kind of service leadership level 5, good to great, level 5 leadership do you want to instill into your kids? That's a good book, by the way. If anyone's taking notes, it's free.
I love it. I love the impact that you were making, my friend. Like honestly, all these years ago, meeting in the bar to this, like really, like you can
God is good.
accomplish anything. And thank you so much for sharing your whole story. Like I think that so often people count themselves out for their past. I could never do that. Stop saying those words because when you
Mm.
lean into what you are being called to do, it's not a matter of making decisions based on your past or where you are even right now. Look at you. You were building the business out of your mother-in-law's house, right? Like it doesn't
I
matter where you
was
are
I
right
was
now.
with I was working with Theo Fleury out of a Subway down the street, Subway sandwich shop.
But this is like, it's not about the show. There's so many people
Yeah,
out there that care too much about what other people think and what it freaking looks like
yeah,
and won't let their ego settle and just
right.
say, show me the way. Show me the way. It doesn't matter. Ryan and I laugh because we had this beautiful farmhouse. We had 10 acres up in Canada. And we come down here, we're living in a 3-bedroom condo that we're very quickly outgrowing, right? And there was this moment. So there's no baths down here, like especially not in our condo. And so my husband, we bath our daughter in a large fish cooler. A
Okay.
large fish cooler is my daughter's bath, okay? And there's a moment that I'm post birth with the baby in the bath. I'm like recovering from birth. And in the bath, I mean in the fish cooler, like up,
Yeah.
knees up to here with the baby. And I just looked at my husband. I'm like, if I ever need to be humbled, remind me of this moment because like this is really what I truly care about is my family and this, whatever we're going through. But the path that gets you there, right? People get so tied up in what it looks like, what it feels like in the time. When you have this vision of the future and how you're serving and how you're helping, nothing else matters. Like nothing else matters. And I think that you sharing with your heart, your vulnerability, first of all, I'm so grateful to have your story here. Thank you for honoring me with your time
Oh,
today and being the
yeah.
podcast that
Thank you
you
for honoring
like that
me.
you
Yeah.
came on, right? Like that you came on right after not doing podcasts, only doing your own podcast, which I was so graced with
Yeah.
to be a guest on. So thank you.
Yeah.
That is such an honor and a privilege for me for you to share your story and to be here. You guys, prosperity movement is such a huge thing helping families and with a bigger mission in their heart. It's not just about the money that you make, it's what you do with it. It's the
Mm.
lifestyle that you live and how you give back.
Intentionality, 100%
Intentionality.
intentionality. We want you to think about the impact that you're leaving, not just like the exercise of from your deathbed or from your funeral, but what is the impact, 50, 100, and even crazy thought, 1,000 years after you're gone. Can you
Mhm.
actually think of that and what you want that to look like? And then can you back engineer to today and what you're going to do today to reflect that?
Absolutely. So where can they find you, Bryan?
So you can go to prosperitymovement.online. You can YouTube Prosperity U podcast. And between those two things, there's so many different ways that you can connect with us. And if you want, we give you some complimentary information. You can go to prosperityu.online. There's a little chat bubble at the bottom right corner. You can just put your information in and ask for a complimentary gift of the blueprint. Engage with us in any way there, and we're happy to provide you with information to help you do proper due diligence and also prepare you for success. And if anything that you get from this call, really my job in the community is to help foster proper culture and heart set and mindset. And so I do a lot of coaching online with our students. We have a lifetime membership that's been made attainable to the average Joe and Jane. We're talking about an investment of between $200 to $300 a month, roughly, so long as your credit score is above 650 for like at this point, like I'm just gonna be transparent. Like it's
Yeah.
just under a five-figure investment that if you do it properly with your CPA, you should be able to, because it's continued education into your own business. You got to talk to your CPA, but it would reduce your taxes. If you're an employee, it should also give you a return, but it's an investment that keeps on growing because it's a lifetime membership. That you get access to 6, 7, and 8-figure earners that are going to help pour into you and your family and your legacy. And I'm on many coaching calls, both grouping and group coaching calls and one-on-one with our lifetime members, that I help instill everything that you've heard on this call today and more.
Thank you so much, Bryan. I really appreciate you. What an amazing mission. I'm so proud of you. I'm so
Thank
proud of
you.
you for what you've done and who you've become and how you're helping people. That is another episode of Freedom Motivated. This one, man, this one's for the books. I hope you listen to it twice and you share it with a couple of friends, because we need more people like you. We need more people out there making an impact in this world. We'll see you again next
And
time.
if you do share
Yeah.
it, there is a very wealthy exchange that occurs, that if you just share the wealth of the knowledge and you keep in contact with us, I'm not going to tell you the number, but it is life-changing on just one referral.
Wow, excellent. So there you know, there you go. I'm so excited for people to connect with you after this episode. Thank you so much. We'll
Thanks,
see you again
Christina.
next time, you guys.
That's
Bye
soon.
for now.